Let's begin with content. Differentiating by content. This is entirely based upon a student's readiness, interests, and their learning profile. It's basically what is taught and how students gain access to what is taught. When a teacher differentiates content, it's the same concept or skill that's taught to all students. However, the curriculum is used to teach that concept or skill differently for different learners, so that each of them can have access to the same content or those concepts that are being taught. For example, if you provide students with a variety of materials like multi-leveled or multi-tiered texts to support their learning, to support their access to the content, or for learners that may not be able to access those levels of text, perhaps they need supplemental audio supports or visual supports that help the student gain access to the same content. Process. Differentiating by process. Again, this is based on student readiness, interest, and their learning profile. The same content is being taught, but the ways in which student makes sense of the content can vary. When teachers differentiate process, they again teach the same concept or skill to each student. However, the manner in which the student makes sense of the topic or the skill can vary. And I think a perfect example of this is something very common in the preschool setting, which is what I am most familiar with, and that is learning centers. So you might be getting at the same objective for all students, but they can choose the place that they go in the classroom, or for older students, the way in which they want to execute their knowledge or explore that content or that skill that is being taught through that process. And third, we have product. Differentiating by product. Again, based on student readiness, interest, and their learning profile. This is about offering students a variety of ways to demonstrate their content knowledge. Providing students with a learning menu or a choice board, very similar to the process of learning. They can, again, when they are sharing what they've learned, have that choice of how they want to express that knowledge. And you, as a teacher, can give them access to this through differentiating by the product, by offering them different options for the product, what they produce to express that knowledge. Modifications. Making modifications to the general education curriculum. Because it can be really overwhelming, there's a lot of information to consider, especially if you have a large class and a large class with a diverse needs. Tomlinson outlines some quick tips to help you get started. First, it's always easy to start small. With any changes you ever make in the classroom, try scaffolding your own experience first with something that's accessible and familiar to you. You need to think about timing and your students, how much time each of them needs in order to finish or produce or explore whatever the content is. You need to be specific. Share the objectives. of the lesson. Share the rubrics so that the students know what the expectations are from the get-go. Plan for quick finishers. When students finish early, question yourself, what is it that made them finish early? What are the options that they have after they finish? Consider the movement in the class, how you've set up your class, how students move about in the room. Consider personal choice and responsibility, like the learning centers and learning menus. Encourage student interactions, and we'll get into this a little bit more with the social skills part of this presentation. Now here is an image, I know that it's very small, of the multiple intelligences chart. And this is just another way and a nice visual of considering all the different types of learners you might have and who might benefit from these different intelligences. Spatial, kinesthetic, musical, logical, verbal, and linguistic. Students should be able to have access to all of these different types of intelligences in order to tap into their deepest understanding. Considerations. Now, there are many important questions to consider when you're going about differentiating lessons for your students. You want to think about where they're at, how they learn, what the main goal of the lesson is, how you can create accommodations specific to that student's needs to attain that main goal. And I think often we do not consider whether the goal has anything to do or is more specific to their social needs, especially as students get older. So thinking if goals are exclusively academic or social, and also who's responsible. Who is responsible for the data collection, the monitoring, the progress of this student. Adaptations. Here are some steps, 6 steps, that I can just leave here and you can read them, for individualized adaptations. And then some visuals of the examples I discussed earlier. So example 1, here's some different options of leveled reading and a drawing activity, a video about insects, bugs, getting at the different intelligences and maybe meeting students where they are at their zone of proximal development. 2. Here's a center chart. You can see where students might choose to go to different centers to explore the same goal or objective of the lesson or day. And 3rd, we have a few examples of these learning menus, which is the assessment component where students have the option of how they will express their knowledge, the knowledge they've gained. Next, we have universal design for learning.